This legal move from Justin Baldoni's team is so brilliant, and it's got to have Blake Lively sweating like crazy. As to quote Ron, which he did chime in, he said here that here it was. Alexander Shapiro is playing chess while others.
Before you even hit play on that next Netflix binge, you need to hear about the legal bombshell that just detonated in the Blake Lively versus Justin Baldoni case. If you've been following this Hollywood drama, what just happened in a New York courtroom could completely flip everything you thought you knew. Hit that subscribe button right now because this story is developing faster than anyone predicted and you won't want to miss a single update. Drop a comment below with your prediction. Will Blake Lively settle this case? Or will she fight to the bitter end? A legal filing just landed that has attorneys across the country calling it one of the most strategically brilliant moves they've seen in years. It's the kind of chess play that doesn't just defend against an attack, it completely changes who's under fire. And right now, Blake Lively's team has to be scrambling. The question everyone's asking, could this single legal maneuver actually force Blake Lively to drop her entire lawsuit? Or will it expose something even bigger about how Hollywood really operates behind the scenes? Let's dive into the legal strategy that's got everyone talking. Here's what just happened and why it matters. Jennifer Abel, one of the key defendants in Blake Lively's lawsuit, just filed a motion for conditional summary judgment against her former employer, Stephanie Jones, and the PR firm Jones Works. On the surface, that might sound like inside baseball legal jargon. But the implications are absolutely devastating. Abel is essentially telling the court, whatever financial penalties I face in this case, Stephanie Jones and her company should be legally required to pay for all of it. Every dollar, every legal fee, every potential settlement, the entire financial burden. This is what attorneys call an indemnification claim. And in this context, it's nothing short of a tactical nuclear option. Why does this matter so much? Because it creates a catastrophic conflict of interest that tears apart Blake Lively's entire legal strategy.
Let's let a lawyer, explain just what's going on here.
Jennifer Abel has filed a motion for conditional summary judgment on her claim, her third-party claim against Jones Works for indemnification. So what she is doing is telling the court, go ahead and enter a judgment that whatever I get stuck with in this case, Jones Works has to pay for it. You might as well just go ahead and enter that judgment now. And the reason she's doing that is because if she gets that judgment, that, of course, protects her for whatever she might be found responsible for. And it also completely mindfucks Stephanie Jones and blows up her strategy. Because now she will want Jennifer Abel to win instead of Blake Lively. It also means
it's brilliant. Wait, keep listening.
That Stephanie Jones, if there are settlement discussions happening, would have to potentially pay Jen Abel's portion of whatever settlement.
Let's break down exactly what's happening here. Jennifer Abel worked as a publicist for Jones Works, which was Justin Baldoni's PR firm. During the summer of 2024, Baldoni and his production company Wayfair Studios were managing the release of their film with Blake Lively. When the movie's promotional tour became a public relations disaster, Abel was doing her job, managing crisis communications for her client. Blake Lively sued Abel, claiming she participated in a coordinated retaliation campaign. Lively's lawyers argue that Abel helped orchestrate a smear operation designed to damage Lively's reputation in the media. But here's the brilliance of Abel's counterattack. She's not denying that she worked on PR strategy for Baldoni. Instead, she's arguing that every single action she took was done as an employee of Jones Works under Stephanie Jones's direction, within the scope of her employment responsibilities. And under New York law, that changes everything. New York follows a legal principle called respondeat superior, Latin for, let the master answer. It means that when an employee acts within the scope of their job duties, the employer is legally responsible for those actions. Not the employee, the employer. Abel's motion presents email after email, text after text, showing that Stephanie Jones was not just aware of the PR strategy, she was actively directing it. Jones called herself a key member of Baldoni's account. She recommended crisis management tactics. She coordinated messaging strategies, all while Abel was her employee. The motion includes one particularly damning email where Jones laid out the PR playbook: flood the zone with positive narratives, mobilize supporters, counter negative stories, ensure Baldoni's perspective gets heard. Standard crisis communications, perhaps. But critically, it was Jones giving these directives while Abel worked under her. If Abel is found liable for anything in Lively's lawsuit, her new legal filing argues that Jones Works must indemnify her. That means Jones and her company would be on the hook for the entire financial penalty. Think about what this does strategically. Stephanie Jones now has a massive personal financial stake in Abel winning this case. If Abel loses, Jones could face bankruptcy. The indemnification claim could potentially cover millions in damages and legal fees. But here's where it gets even more twisted. Stephanie Jones is the person who provided Blake Lively's legal team with the text messages that form the backbone of Lively's entire case.
You heard that right.
Jones took Abel's work phone when she terminated Abel in August 2024, extracted all the text messages and emails, and those communications ended up in Blake Lively's hands. Lively then used those messages to file a Doe lawsuit to subpoena even more communications, which were subsequently leaked to the New York Times for that explosive December article. The "we can bury anyone" text message that's been quoted endlessly? That came from Abel's work phone, which Jones controlled. The entire narrative about a coordinated smear campaign? Built on communications that Jones handed over. Stephanie Jones essentially provided the ammunition for Blake Lively's lawsuit. But now, because of this indemnification motion, Jones has every incentive for that lawsuit to fail. Legal experts are calling this move absolutely brilliant. It creates what one attorney described as a complete mindfuck for the opposition. Jones can't simultaneously support Blake Lively's case and protect herself financially. The two goals are now in direct conflict. If Blake Lively wins her case against Abel, Stephanie Jones loses financially. If Abel successfully defends herself, Jones avoids potential bankruptcy. The incentives have been completely reversed. Even more important, if there are any settlement discussions happening behind closed doors, Stephanie Jones could potentially be required to pay Abel's portion of any settlement to Blake Lively. That's the kind of exposure that forces people to rethink their entire strategy. To understand why this legal maneuver is so devastating, we need to rewind and look at how this entire situation developed. The conflict started during production of the film adaptation of Colleen Hoover's novel. Blake Lively starred as the lead character, while Justin Baldoni both directed the film and played a supporting role. During filming in 2023, tensions apparently developed on set regarding working conditions. According to Lively's complaint, she raised concerns about Baldoni's behavior during production. She claimed she presented a list of conditions required for her to continue filming after a production pause. Those conditions were reportedly agreed to, and filming concluded. When the movie was released in August 2024, something unusual happened. Lively and Baldoni barely appeared together during promotional events. Fans noticed the two stars never shared the red carpet. Media coverage began speculating about behind-the-scenes drama. The film performed well at the box office despite the speculation. But Lively faced criticism for how she discussed the movie's themes during press appearances. Some viewers felt she wasn't taking the film's domestic violence subject matter seriously enough. As August progressed, negative coverage about Lively increased. Stories emerged questioning her behavior on set, her treatment of cast and crew, her approach to the promotional tour. It was during this period that Baldoni's team brought on crisis communications specialist Melissa Nathan. In December 2024, Blake Lively filed a complaint with the California Civil Rights Department alleging sexual harassment and retaliation. That same month, the New York Times published a detailed investigation based on that complaint and on text messages obtained through a subpoena process. Those text messages came from Jennifer Abel's work phone, a phone controlled by Stephanie Jones's company, Jones Works. The messages showed PR professionals discussing media strategy, potential article placements, monitoring social media sentiment. One exchange in particular became the centerpiece of Lively's allegations. In that conversation, publicist Melissa Nathan allegedly told Abel, You know we can bury anyone. Lively's legal team presented this as evidence of a coordinated attack campaign. But Abel maintains the messages show standard crisis management work, professionals doing their jobs to protect a client's reputation during a publicity firestorm. So, what does this all mean from a legal standpoint? Let's cut through the complexity. First, understand that indemnification claims like the one Abel just filed are powerful because they shift financial risk. They're saying, even if something went wrong, I wasn't the one truly responsible. My employer should bear the cost. For an indemnification claim to succeed under New York law, Abel needs to prove several elements. She must show she was acting as an employee, not an independent contractor. She must demonstrate her actions were within the scope of her employment. And she needs to establish that her employer had knowledge of and control over her activities. The evidence Abel presented appears strong on all these points. Multiple emails show Stephanie Jones directing PR strategy. Jones herself claimed to be a key team member on Baldoni's account. She provided strategic recommendations. She coordinated responses to media inquiries. Critically, Abel includes evidence that even after she informed Jones of her intention to leave the company in July 2024, Jones continued managing the Wayfair Studios account through mid-August. That timing matters enormously because it was during August that most of the allegedly problematic PR activities occurred. If Abel was still technically employed by Jones Works during this period, and if Jones was directing the work, then under respondeat superior, Jones Works bears legal responsibility. But here's what makes this truly powerful as a legal strategy. It doesn't require Abel to win her case first. The motion asks for conditional summary judgment, meaning the court would enter a ruling now that if Abel is found liable later, Jones must pay. This creates immediate pressure. Stephanie Jones suddenly faces the prospect of unlimited financial exposure tied to a case she's not directly defending. She can't control Abel's legal strategy. She can't negotiate independently. But she could be stuck with the entire bill. From Blake Lively's perspective, this is a nightmare scenario. Her case relies heavily on those text messages from Abel's work phone. But the person who provided those messages, Stephanie Jones, now has every incentive for Lively's case to fail. If Jones wanted to, she could potentially provide evidence or testimony that undermines Lively's interpretation of those messages. She could clarify context. She could explain that the communications represented routine crisis management, not a malicious attack campaign. Or consider what happens in settlement negotiations. Typically, defendants want cases to settle quickly to avoid litigation costs and reputational damage. But if Stephanie Jones is facing indemnification liability, she might actively pressure Abel to fight rather than settle, because any settlement could mean Jones pays Abel's share. The normal incentive structure has been completely inverted. That's why legal commentators are calling this move brilliant. Step back from the legal technicalities for a moment and look at what this reveals about how Hollywood actually functions. This case has pulled back the curtain on the PR industry in ways that make a lot of powerful people uncomfortable. We're seeing internal communications between publicists discussing media strategy. We're watching in real time as reputation management tactics get exposed and debated in court filings. The fundamental question underlying everything: where's the line between legitimate crisis communications and coordinated reputation destruction? Every public figure has PR representation. When controversy strikes, those representatives develop strategies to protect their client's image. They pitch positive stories. They work to counteract negative narratives. They monitor media coverage and social media sentiment. Is that unethical? Or is it just how the modern media ecosystem works? Blake Lively's position is that what happened in August 2024 crossed a line from defensive PR into offensive attack. She argues Baldoni's team didn't just defend his reputation, they actively worked to destroy hers. Baldoni's team maintains they were responding to what they characterize as Lively's own PR campaign when they claim misrepresented events on set and unfairly damaged Baldoni's career and reputation. The truth is probably more complicated than either narrative. Both sides had PR teams. Both sides were working media contacts. Both sides were trying to shape the story. But what makes this case particularly significant is how it demonstrates the power imbalances in these situations. Blake Lively is an A-list celebrity married to another A-list celebrity. She has massive reach and influence. When she speaks, people listen. Justin Baldoni had a smaller platform. When negative stories about him started circulating, his team felt they needed aggressive crisis management to counter what they saw as unfair attacks backed by immense star power. The question of who started what, who went too far, who was justified in their response, those questions might never have clear answers. But the case forces us to reckon with how reputation management works in the social media age. Consider how different this is from even 20 years ago. Back then, a celebrity facing bad press might give an interview to a major magazine or appear on a talk show. Now, the battleground is Twitter, TikTok, Instagram. Public opinion can shift in hours based on social media trends. PR firms have adapted. They monitor social platforms constantly. They track sentiment. They work with influencers and content creators. They try to amplify positive narratives and suppress negative ones. The "we can bury anyone" text that's been so central to this case, was that a threat to destroy Blake Lively? Or was it a PR professional overpromising to a potential client about their capabilities? Context matters. Intent matters. But in a lawsuit, everything gets viewed through the most damaging possible lens. What's clear is that Stephanie Jones's decision to hand over those text messages to Blake Lively's team was a calculated move. Jones had terminated Jennifer Abel. Jones was facing competition from Nathan and Abel potentially taking clients. By providing those communications, Jones gave Lively ammunition while potentially damaging her former employee and rivals. But now that decision might come back to haunt her. The indemnification motion means Jones could pay an enormous price for her choice to cooperate with Lively's legal team. There's rough justice in that. Jones allegedly violated her former employee's privacy, betrayed client confidences, and helped launch a legal case built on private communications. Now, she might face financial ruin if that case succeeds. So where does this go from here? What should we expect in the coming weeks and months? First, expect Stephanie Jones and Jones Works to fight this indemnification motion aggressively. They'll argue that Abel wasn't acting within the scope of employment, or that her actions were unauthorized, or that they had no knowledge of improper conduct. But the evidence Abel has presented makes that an uphill battle. Those emails show Jones was actively involved in directing PR strategy. She can't credibly claim she had no idea what her own employee was doing. Second, watch for potential fractures in Blake Lively's case. Her lawsuit depends on presenting a unified narrative of coordinated retaliation. But if Stephanie Jones starts undermining that narrative to protect herself from indemnification liability, Lively's story could fall apart. Jones could provide testimony or evidence showing that the PR work was routine crisis management. She could explain that the dramatic language in those texts was standard industry exaggeration. She could clarify context in ways that make everything look less sinister. Lively's attorneys will try to prevent this by arguing Jones has an obvious bias and conflict of interest. But even if the court limits what Jones can say, the mere existence of the conflict undermines Lively's case conceptually. Third, consider what this means for settlement prospects. Typically, cases like this settle before trial because both sides want to avoid the cost, time, and uncertainty of litigation. But the indemnification issue makes settlement harder. If Blake Lively offers to settle, she'd presumably want Jennifer Abel to contribute to any payment. But Stephanie Jones, knowing she might have to cover Abel's share, could pressure Abel to reject settlement offers. Jones might calculate that her best financial outcome is Abel winning outright rather than settling. That creates a bizarre situation where the person who helped start Lively's case becomes the biggest obstacle to resolving it. Fourth, don't be surprised if we see more dramatic legal filings in the coming weeks. Both sides have shown they're willing to use aggressive tactics. Expect more motions, more document dumps, more strategic leaks. The broader case, Lively's sexual harassment and retaliation claims against Baldoni, remains pending. That case has a March 2026 trial date scheduled. But a lot could happen before then. If the indemnification motion succeeds, it could pressure settlements or dismissals. There's also the possibility of criminal referrals. Some legal observers have suggested that the way text messages were obtained and shared might raise questions about privacy violations or unauthorized access to communications. Whether prosecutors would pursue such angles remains uncertain. What's absolutely clear is that this case has become far more complicated than a simple he said, she said about on-set behavior. It's now a tangled web of PR professionals turning on each other, former employers and employees at war, and overlapping conflicts of interest. For Blake Lively, the question becomes, is this lawsuit worth the continued scrutiny, the legal costs, the reputational risk? She wanted to clear her name and expose what she characterized as retaliation. But the case has dragged her through months of negative publicity and revealed uncomfortable details about her own team's PR tactics. For Justin Baldoni, the fight is about survival. He's faced enormous reputational damage from Lively's allegations. His team believes they're defending against false accusations backed by Hollywood power and influence. This indemnification motion shows they're willing to use every legal tool available. For Stephanie Jones, this has become an existential threat. She could face financial ruin over her decision to cooperate with Blake Lively's legal team. The irony is almost poetic. She helped build the case that might destroy her financially. And for Jennifer Abel, this motion represents her attempt to flip the script entirely. Rather than being portrayed as a villain in a harassment case, she's fighting back by arguing she was just an employee doing her job under her boss's direction. The Blake Lively versus Justin Baldoni case has become one of the most legally complex and strategically fascinating celebrity disputes in recent memory. What started as allegations of on-set misconduct has evolved into a multifaceted battle involving employment law, PR ethics, and questions about how power operates in Hollywood. This indemnification motion from Jennifer Abel might be the legal equivalent of dropping a bomb on the entire case. It forces everyone involved to recalculate their strategies. It exposes conflicts that could tear apart Blake Lively's narrative. And it shows that in legal warfare, sometimes the most devastating move isn't the obvious frontal attack. It's the flanking maneuver that changes who's even fighting whom. So, what do you think? Was this legal move as brilliant as attorneys are saying, or is it just creating more chaos? Do you believe Blake Lively's allegations of a coordinated smear campaign, or do you think this is standard Hollywood PR warfare? And most importantly, could Stephanie Jones's involvement ultimately sink Lively's entire case? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. This story is far from over, and we'll be covering every development as it happens. If you found this analysis valuable, smash that like button and hit subscribe so you don't miss our next deep dive. We're committed to breaking down these complex cases with the seriousness and detail they deserve. No clickbait, no sensationalism, just thorough analysis of what's really happening. And remember to turn on notifications, because in this case, breaking news could drop at any moment. When it does, we'll be here to explain what it means and why it matters. Until next time, stay informed, stay critical, and keep questioning the narratives you're being fed. Because in Hollywood, the real story is always more complicated than the headlines suggest.